we have Jorg Schauberger, who is sitting to my left, and I'd like to give just a little bit of an introduction. He came from generations of Austrian foresters, referring to his grandfather. His family's motto translates to faith in the silent forests. He became aware of water's special role as the lifeblood of the planet. He watched rare phenomena such as landlocked lake rejuvenating itself by suddenly creating a fast accelerating whirlpool, followed by a massive waterspout, a vortex rising above the lake. Schauberger warned against splitting the atom for nuclear power plants or burning oil or gas to power society. He predicted destruction from too much explosion-based technology. Unbalanced, the natural world would degenerate and people might morally degenerate along with it. He urged people to comprehend nature and copy nature in their technologies. It's an honor to welcome Jorg Schauberger, Viktor Schauberger's grandson. Jorg is an author and editor of several books and video documentations about his grandfather. Viktor Schauberger, speaker at the International Congress and head of PKS. For more than 2 decades, he, together with his wife Ingrid, organizes international seminars in Austria dealing with new ways of river engineering, futuristic energy and propulsion systems, as well as alternative ways in agriculture and forestry. He suggests that people comprehend nature, copy it, and then cooperate with nature. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the stage.
Thank you. And that's, I still got 1 hour. Yes?
Click that on.
Okay. Good morning. I want to take you on a trip back into history, and let's take a look at today and maybe a little bit into the future. What I'm talking about is, thank you for the introduction, about water and vortex, my grandfather Viktor and my father Walter Schauberger. So when we look into nature and when we look into water, we always see that there are vortices in nature, like the Kármán street, or when you look into the water making a vortex. And what's the speciality about that I want to talk about? We see a vortex in air and water. And there are some phenomena about that, really fantastic. If you're talking about phenomena, there is in New York at Times Square, Ripley's Believe It or Not, curiosities around the world. And at the entrance, there is a huge vortex, and it sucks you right into the exhibition. And you can see that my wife already is at the booth, at the desk, buying tickets for this exhibition. So the vortex has power, not only within the vortex, also for the surrounding. That picture was also taken by my wife, Ingrid. So what's the difference between our technology and nature? Compare the velocity. We came here by car, me by train, 13 hours ride from Austria. And when we look at the wheel, the velocity at the periphery is higher than in the center. If we look at nature, at, for example, a spiral or a vortex, the movement accelerates when you go towards the center. That's the difference. And okay, some slides have still German. Oh, come on. So here we see how nature works, how water works, slowly going faster, faster, faster into the center. This is some, okay, thank you. Centrifugal versus centripetal forces. In technique, in engineering, everything expands. You heat something up, you create pressure, and with this pressure you move something, like your car or other things like atomic power stations. Centripetal means we concentrate. We take things from outward to the center. One example is from seed to tree. If you take a seed into the soil, what do you need that in 20 years later there is a huge tree? What do you need? Pardon? Water. Sun, energy. Soil, yeah. Nutrients. CO2, right? And some other things. Pardon?
Maybe at the beginning you need desire to do it. It begins with desire.
Desire, yeah, and but it's not me; it's the seed. It wants to be a tree, become a tree. But is it a conifer? Is it maple or whatever? It has to have the information first, and then an input that it starts growing. Yeah, we discuss later, great. CO2 is very important. To keep it very simple, the tree or the seed takes the C to build matter and gives O2, oxygen, to the environment. And then we have another thing, gravitation and levitation. I want to talk about it a little later, but Viktor Schauberger, my grandfather, always said, when you have a power, you have a counterforce. If you have a force, a counterforce. So if there is gravitation, there must be levitation. As we from Latin know, gravis grave means heavy, levis leve, light. So there is a counterforce, you can also say anti-gravity. And interesting is, a tree grows when it concentrates. It's a centripetal force. And without heat, without noise, without polluting the environment or wasting resources. So it's totally different to what we know from our modern technique. And Viktor Schauberger says, everything that is natural is silent, simple, and cheap. Other pairs, we have, for example, day and night, hot and cold, gravitation, levitation, pressure, subpressure, and many, many others. As nature is polar, there is, like the yin and yang, you always have a little bit of the opposite thing within yourself. So the computer now only knows on or off, 1 or 0. It's dual, but nature is polar. And Viktor doubled it, saying it's bipolar, bipolar. But this is now a medical expression, so we use polar. Okay, and I want to take you into the world of water. Like in our mountains in Austria, it's a typical way, water comes down the hills, we go closer and close at that waterfall, and we realize it is water drops that come down here. And how can we look at water drops? We can freeze them. And what did Mr. Wilson Bentley, and before that Johannes Kepler and others realized that, or what did he find out or not find out? Never ever found 2 total identical snow crystals. And the basic of each snow crystal is a water drop. So, is it now science what we are doing when we looking at water? Because we do experiments, and every time we do an experiment under the same conditions, we get a different result. So, water science is no science for the dogmatics. So, But here we see one of the methods established by Masaru Emoto, for example, to let water drops freeze and then look through the microscope and you find wonderful crystals. Another method is you take slides with little droplets of water, let the water evaporate, and what's left over is these, for example, salty crystals. Or, look at that, it reminds of a universe. This is a little water drop from a spring nearby from our house. Yeah, and we come to that later. And here, this is a dew drop. When the water has evaporated, the dew, and this is these are the leftovers. And very interesting, the ring around this drop. We tried to start the video, okay, we skip it. And my grandfather Viktor said, in each drop of good water, a world of possibilities is encapsulated. And we only have to open it. And then we have hundreds and thousands of possibilities. And Viktor tried to find new ways to get energy out of water. So Viktor Schauberger, he was a forester. He grew up in the Bohemian woods. It's at the border from Austria to Germany and the Czech Republic, Bohemia. He was an observer, saw energy concepts in nature. He was a witness of changes in water management, forestry, agriculture, energy production. He was cautious about exploitation of resources or damaging the environment. He was an inventor, from log flumes to copper plows to implosion machines. And he had some strategies for a biotechnique, working with nature, not against nature. From early childhood on, his goal was to understand nature. So, I'll take you once again back into our mountains, the water, and how it worked for thousands and thousands of years to create this wonderful sculpture. Viktor stated, nature works very slowly. It's impossible to go into the laboratory and think we know what water is. You have to go outside to look in the natural environment, to look at water and the possibilities you have with water. So nature works very slowly. So does this. Only nature can be and should be our teacher, is another statement. Although he said we have to look at nature, he went into the laboratory. Here, Viktor on the right. And of course, he found special things about water in his laboratory. For example, he invented an apparatus to create spring-like water. You take water from the tap or wherever and let it run through this machine. It's a copy of a natural full cycle of water. Water comes down, goes into the soil, regenerates, cleans itself, takes minerals, moving upwards in meanders in the mountains, and you get a very cold and very healthy water. He tried to copy that. And then he realized that there are qualities in the water which are of great importance for animals, for plants, and finally for humans as well. Important, very similar to the vitamins supplied by plants. So it's very important to have good water to drink, good water for the soil, for the plants, for the animals. And realize these statements are very, very old, up to 100 years. And he was against clear cutting, clear felling. Because what do we do at these, for example, in the rainforest? We create monoculture. Monoculture, in our words, you have only one kind of plant. These plants have roots. They go to a certain level and then it's gone. We see that there are no trees. Therefore are no insects, no birds, the silent spring. And we have monocultivated soil. And as there is no roots going deeper, bringing minerals from a deeper level up, or water from a deeper level up, so the water itself is monocultivated. Less resistant, the plants, the soil, the water, and the food that we eat, so we ourselves get less resistant to diseases, etc. Because Viktor found out each kind of plant produces its own kind of water. So we face as many different waters as the number of different plants. And if we have only one plant in our garden, on our field, we have only one water. Speaking of water, so dry area. Many of you are familiar with the story of Viktor and Walter Schauberger going to the United States in 1958. They were promised that the Americans would help them to go further on in research in implosion, propulsion systems, etc. But at the very time they were there, NASA was founded. And so all the money and all the brightness went into rocket machines and to fly to the orbit or to the moon. So no one was interested in implosion anymore. And when he got back, Viktor died in 1958. But his first findings he described 100 years ago. So it's very interesting. Once again, look, he's born 1885 and died 58, 5 days after his return from the United States. Looking at another man. First, a statement: for a person who lives 100 years in the future, the present is no surprise. Another man said similar things, Nikola Tesla: the present is theirs, the future for which I really work is mine. Viktor Schauberger, born in Austria. Nikola Tesla, a Serb, born in Croatia at that time, part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. He died in New York. So Viktor died after his return from the States. Nikola Tesla died in the States. Wilhelm Reich died in the States and was, of course, born Austrian. So was Rudolf Steiner. All Austrians from birth. So can one compare Viktor Schauberger and Nikola Tesla? Let's see. On the left, you see the machine of Viktor, the propulsion system, the Repulsine. And on the other side, you see gigantic manifestation of what man can build. So, this is the biggest machine we know from Viktor, the so-called home power generator, Heimkraftwerk. But Viktor said, I'm neither a technologist nor an engineer. All I understand is the principle. And this is what I'm telling you. I'm also not an engineer. I'm talking about the principles. The engineers will talk to you later. Viktor also observed the trout, fish. How come that a fish stands still in the raging river? And sometimes they can move up a waterfall. How do they do it? And then he said, a fish doesn't swim, it is swum. A bird does not fly, it is flown. So you have to take the whole system, not the fish itself or the bird. You have to take the whole system. And Viktor tried to let logs, wooden sticks, swim. And he looked at a snake swimming, and then he thought, oh, how can a log swim? Even if it's heavier than water. He built his log flumes because bringing woods out of the mountains was very, very dangerous. Look at that man. If he didn't get to take the curve, he would never do his job again. Or these poor guys. This is all the logs came down in a creek, in a little river. And then they had to take them apart like Mikado, but very dangerous. If something moved, many people lost their legs, hands, or their lives. So it was better to bring the logs down the valley in log flumes. And the new thing about Viktor's log flumes was they were round, not trapeze form, they were round. And that was good in a way. One log did not swim, and he let water flow and flow and flow, but it didn't move. So he thought about a snake swimming and thought, how can a log swim like a snake? Can't move, but I can move the water. And he let built in fins or guiding vanes that the water made a longitudinal wave, a spiral, a vortex. And if this is the log and the vortex comes here you create suction. So the principle in nature is suction, not pushing, pulling. So it's also in German, we call it ziehen. And when we think about our children, we say Erziehung. That means education, educare from Latin. You pull them, let them grow, not force them, no pressure. So education, Erziehung, nicht Erdrückung, for all the listeners in the German-speaking countries. So this is, on the left you see the starting point, where all the logs were gathered, then let them swim down, and then Viktor invented some sorting machines that, depending on how long, how big the trunks are, they were divided into different parts. And he made sketches about how to create such a log flume or rivers. And water is the only source of life when it is moved according to nature. And this is also a sketch or letter to my father, and where Viktor showed his principles. Meandering instead of straightening. Hi, American guys, Los Angeles River. But we do have the same in Austria, in our capital, Vienna. So the interesting thing is that Wien is the name of Vienna in German, and the river is also called Wien, as very often the river and the city where the river runs through have the same name. But nowadays you see the tunnel over there. Most of the times you don't see the river Wien anymore, only at this small part. See this couple over there? Huh? Here. Very romantic. Okay, this is also a straightened river, but at least there is a little shade. So we have examples what man did, mostly men did, to the water and how it wanted to go in a natural way. Here in Holland, you of course know the river Rhine. This is in Germany, near Karlsruhe, how over decades or centuries, the river went smaller and smaller, straighter and straighter. Here's one of the plans. You see the meandering first and then the straightening of the river. And this is River Rhine, when it comes from the Swiss Alps to Liechtenstein, Austria, and then the Lake Constance, Bodensee. And Viktor said, I want to help you with this. But they said, no, thank you, we have all the plans, or we know how to work with the river. Okay, then take a look at this picture. Can you imagine what the water wants to do? This is not man-made. These meanders are made by the water, but here it want to go there, it can't. It want to go there, it can't, etc., 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 etc. Here the river is straightened, but the motorway has a bend. So you see how we look at traffic and how we look at water. But you see what water really wants to do, the River Rhine. Asking you, Dutch people, where's this? Biesbosch, right, Biesbosch. And what is very interesting, this is a man-made, or woman-made, I don't know. It's new land with a channel created by man, but when we look closer at the water, it makes his meanders by itself. You see, the water doesn't flow where man said you have to flow. It creates its own riverbed at Biesbosch. And this river is not a river. Okay. It's only made by ebb tide. But let's go into river engineering after Viktor Schauberger. Here you see also a channel in the upper sketch. And what is new? First, there was the water running straight, and as it ran too fast, they built in steps that the water went whoop, whoop, whoop. And the fish came here, whoop. They couldn't go up. So the idea of Ottmar Grober A friend of ours, he's a river engineer, retired now. He said, okay, don't make steps like that. Only 2/3 from this side, 2/3 from that, from that, from that. So the water can go down this and the fish can come up this. So very simple things, and you see in the picture that you don't see any stones, rocks that look out of the water. That's very important. And you see on the left a sketch of a patent of Viktor from the 1920s or 30s. That's also from a patent. And you see that Viktor suggested to build in some stones or, to create a special flow in the rivers. He had men who worked with him. Nowadays, we do it a little different. Here we take rocks, and you see they are overflown. And with a sketch on the left-hand side, you see that the water is concentrated in the center. So less pressure on the banks, less pressure on the periphery. You concentrate all the energy in the center of the river. So there's less damage when it comes to floodings. And there are different, you see number D, there are different systems to do this. To show you, here, low water, you see the stones, you see here some stones, but they are underneath the water. Normally, engineers say, I have built this, can you see the wall, etc., etc. Can you see the stones, the dam I built? Here you don't see anything when there is high water. But what we can see is that the water concentrates in the center and the bank is not touched anymore by the flood. So to build something into the river is better than to force it from the outside. Work with nature. Work with the water. So Ottmar Grober, the pioneer, he now works with huge stones when it comes to big rivers. And he has, therefore, the machines and the workers, 80-ton bagger, for example. This was on the border between Slovakia and Austria. And after they had worked, you can't see anything in the water. But you see the pattern of the river, that there is something in the water. This Thursday we will have a huge conference in Germany, Lauda-Königshofen, where river engineers meet. So if you are interested in river engineering after Viktor Schauberger, this weekend from Thursday on in Lauda-Königshofen, Baden-Württemberg. Here, Ottmar Grober built in only some rocks that create a funnel, but not only in this area where he did build, there is a new stream. You see here, 3 times upstream and 3 times downstream. With these little stones, he creates a new stream. In-stream river training. And you can also do it with very, very little creeks. You see here the meandering within a straight line. Before that, the water ran, but now it is meandering, and especially you can see it in winter. And what can we observe here? Why is there a part not icy? Velocity of the water and movement. Yeah. Temperature? Yeah, temperature. So if you take the example of the log, it swims in the center, or with river engineering, water goes to the center. If Albert Einstein's tea leaf paradox, you have a cup of tea, you give in the tea leaves, pour with hot water, stir in your pot. What will happen to the tea leaves? They go towards the center. Right. So that stuff that is heavier than water goes to the center. And when it's only water, then the water that is closer to the anomaly point of 4 degrees goes towards the center. So we have spiral movement, and the water in the center is nearer 4 degrees than the other. And at the periphery, it freezes. You understand? Yeah? Okay. Talking about pendulum ramp. Mathematician Christine Sindela, she made calculations of a huge building by river engineering by Ottmar Grober, made her doctor technique, and now is head of the water laboratory at the University for Life Science Bodenkultur in Vienna. She's head of the water laboratory, and that's great that the Schauberger doctor is now at the university. So, coming to Viktor, and talking about energy. I didn't talk about energy, but Viktor stated in 41, there is a generator in every river. Flussgenerator, river generator. And what does it mean? He says, when you guide water in a naturalistic way, then it builds up power and gives this energy to the environment at the fort, and then in the next curve creates again energy. And that's very interesting. He showed it with these energy created or formed by the movement of water. And we have one author, it is Olof Alexandersson from Sweden. He wrote the book Living Water, Lebendes Wasser, det levande vattnet. And he showed us with 90 years at that time that he went to a river, a naturalistic running river, took a wire, took an ampere meter, and he got a pulsating current only by this wire at the river. And then he went to a straightened river, and he said that was a dead current, no pulsating current. So nature knows how to create energies, or create, yeah, when you work with nature, not against her. So now, Verfahren zur Reinigung des Wasserstoffes von gasförmigen Beimengungen und zur Erzielung langsamen, geregelten Verbrennens des Wasserstoffes. Viktor in the 30s had an idea to guide hydrogen over metals like platinum or copper to create helium and to gain energy. When you are interested in this, I can show you more. But one of the disciples of Olof Alexandersson, Lasse Johansson, he found out that Viktor Schauberger had some ideas in the 1930s. So Lasse Johansson from the Institute of Ecotechnology in Sweden at Ivone 2013, he showed us these slides. In a memoir, Viktor Schauberger describes that in this period he produced copper, which when inspected by a chemist was noted to be of the purest form the expert had ever seen. 1935, he patented a vacuum gas turbine and methods to use vacuum to assist combustion of water gas. And here, an early turbine concept of my grandfather, Viktor Schauberger. Turbine in a diary by a Mr. Hole, so we call it the Hole Papers, from February 36. Note the helium production at the top. Helium. If you are interested in, I can show you the slides later. Another early turbine design by Viktor Schauberger, a pillar repulsion from February 1941. Note the palladium surface on the top. His conclusion is the hypothesis of Viktor Schauberger as one of the early pioneers of low-temperature nuclear reaction has been strengthened. Lasse Johansson, 2013. So, Viktor Turbine, he was a very good painter and making sketches like this. This is not made with a computer, this is by hand. Viktor's original drawings. And when he thought about machines, Viktor noticed that today's technology strives to move forwards with forces that operate backwards. So think of a rocket or whatever. And he thought about, oh, we have to think it in another way, not pushing, pulling. And this is the famous patent, he applied for it, repulsion in 1940. And one of these devices is said that it flew to the ceiling of a workshop, but was damaged, of course. And here, why? We don't know. It operated very fast and then flew away. The principle behind it is two wavy plates, he called it membranes, accelerated very fast. And when there is centrifugal forces force the media in between towards the periphery, and then there is suction for new material with some catalysts, but we don't know which he used. And this is one of the two so-called photos. Nowadays we would make it with Photoshop, retouche, was it in that time. So we don't know if this really existed, because I think that this here is not very realistic I got 17 minutes. 17 minutes left. Thank you. So this is the patent he applied for. Sketches. We can talk about it later, or you can read in books. And in 1956, people thought, oh, will we fly with flying saucers someday? And here, the story is that Viktor Schauberger created several types of this repulsin. And when, at the end of World War II, one witness saw flying saucers near Prague, lifting with people in it, and he saw them and thought, oh, this is Viktor's technique inside. And told Viktor later, I saw flying saucers and I think they used your system. And when there were sightings in Chile, in Argentine, etc., in the late 40s, Viktor said, okay, if these flying saucers are man-made and my system is working in it, so I'm the inventor of the flying saucers. He never saw one. I never saw one. But he himself stated, okay, if it's man-made then and my technique is inside, I am the inventor of flying saucers. So, 1958, my father and grandfather took all their stuff to America, to the States, to Texas, and then they were allowed to go back. And it was the plan that my father and family, me too, go back to the United States to work there, Viktor Schauberger to work in Austria. They correspond, and my father Viktor, as a technician, he would translate Viktor's words into the engineering world. The Repulsine, they left, but Viktor died, and so nobody knew where will all the stuff be. And then one fan of UFO, he found out that they are still existing and took this photograph of the repulsin in Texas. And then we flew to Texas and looked, where is it? And here it was, this flying saucer, and we have to invent a new technique. We saw it on a test stand at Hal Puthoff's laboratory. So very interesting, but he stated some parts are missing and we don't know what is missing, and we don't want to run it in high speed because the material is too weak now and it would go flat and then it's gone. It's the last of its kind, and so we don't want to damage it. But there is, from the aircraft industry, there are interests in this propulsion system, and it was remodeled some years ago. But they told us they didn't find any effect. Okay. Just to show you that there is still work on it. Okay, going back to nature and Viktor's ideas how to guide water, not only in rivers, also in pipes, in a spiraling motion. And these are sketches, how to guide water. And from these patents he had from his log flumes in straight pipes, he came to egg-shaped pipes. A patent, international patent from 51. In Austria, they granted it in 58. And different kind of pipes. And there was research done, and it looked like if a special type of a pipe, the water came out faster than it came in. So it accelerated in the pipe. And out of this system, Viktor Schauberger let build his home power generator with twisted pipes. But the machine broke at the first attempt, so we don't know if it may have worked or not. Here you see him. It's the only picture of Viktor Schauberger with one of his machines. Home power generator, Heimkraftwerk. And then he created some kind of suction through motion of a twisted pipe and called it Sogwendel. This is one of the designs to move water. And this is now a picture of my father Walter. He was the first guy who founded a green movement around 1950 in Austria, Grüne Front, Austria's first green movement. And this is where he established PKS, Pythagoras-Kepler system. This is my home house. Here I grew up in this house. And there we do our seminars in Austria. Here on the left you see Olof Alexandersson, first visiting Austria in 1961. The little boy in front is me. And my father did seminars, as I told you. And he liked to go out in the open air. This is how I did the seminars at home. And he invented, Walter Schauberger, egg-shaped reaction chambers for exhaust from cars, etc., etc. Very successful, but not needed at that time. And he came up with mathematical calculations to the harmonical relations, hyperbolic cones. Does it go back? No. So hyperbolic cones after calculations of my father. And this cone you can use for water experiments. And we do these experiments at the moment at Wetsus in Leeuwarden in Friesland, here in Holland. Investigating the flow structure of a vortex in the Schauberger funnel. Very promising. So just to give you a glimpse how it looks like. And okay, we're gonna move on. And this is, for example, with this hyperbolic shape thing, water treatment devices for household, for shower, for drinking. And this is an interesting thing. The Malmö group, the Swedish guys, they rebuilt a suggestion by my father. So if you have water that is, where there are particles in it, here it's coffee grain, and you make a vortex, like Albert Einstein's tea leaves. They go to the center. And you see, you can here suck out the stuff, and the rest of the water is clean again. Very simple. Filter without filter. Or you can use these funnels for ponds. I'll show you. Here in front of our house we do have a pond. And you see the algae here, full of algae, and the water is dirty. And this is the moment when we started the funnel, just recycling the water. We started the funnel with a pump. Here you see the algae in the lake. And down on the bottom doesn't look great. 4 days later, without any chemicals, only by moving the water in a centripetal way, the water was clean. And still is. And this was in August 2018, where it was very, very hot. See, the water is clean. So, move water in special ways. Here you remember this picture of these evapo images from the spring near our house. This is how spring water looks like under the microscope. And we had an investigation with research done with the University of Stuttgart. On the left, you see tap water in Stuttgart. And it doesn't look like spring water. So, because it comes 100 kilometers from the Lake Constance in pipes to Stuttgart. But after we let it run through a Schauberger funnel, it again looked the same water, nearly like spring water. And this research, the hypothesis is that influences that came with the long way, 100 kilometers, in the pipe are erased, and the original quality comes up again in the water. So you can erase, they say, maybe you can erase bad information only through vortexing the water. One more picture of a vortex. Once again, look at the inward accelerating movement. And again, think about this. What I told you, everything that is natural is silent, simple, and cheap. Think of nature. Is there any noise when a tree grows up? No. And Viktor was asked, how should it be done? You always say you make it wrong. The answer is simple, exactly the opposite way that it is done today. We only have to turn 180 degrees. We have to think or go in the opposite direction. If you're in a dead-end street, you can only come out of the dead-end street if you move the other direction. And here is the K&K principle, kapieren und kopieren, or comprehend and copy nature to understand nature, and then copy her methods. And then we have another C one could add to cooperate with nature. And I thank you for your cooperation listening to me. Thank you very much. Thank you. 4 minutes left.